Hi guys, it's Tosh here at Tactical Hyve, and today we're going to go over the construction of ghillie hats. I'm going to show you and talk about some old school methods that we used to use creating ghillie hats, and then I've got some more expedient ways to get the job done. So this is one of my ghillie hats that I wore while I was in the teams and do stalking and stuff like this. I would take this ghillie hat pretty much everywhere I went, just in case I needed it. You know, I've talked in the past about the ghillie hat being the most important part of your ghillie setup, and I truly do believe that. It's the single most crucial kit for camouflaging and setting up in a sniper hide. All right, so if you look at this ghillie hat, you'll see ties and old rubber bands. These are all worn out. We're going to build a new one today, but you can see rubber bands and there were ties in it. And, you know, this thing's been through quite a bit of abuse. But we're going to start from scratch. Well, not from scratch. I think this is from Tactical Tailor. Yeah, Tactical Tailor makes a baseline ghillie hat, but you guys don't have to go and buy a prefabbed ghillie hat. You can do all this stuff yourself with an old floppy hat, old cowboy hat, or even a ball cap if you really want to. But Tactical Tailor actually makes a really good baseline starting point, and I do recommend it. We're going to start with the Tactical Tailor hat, but if you're going to do this with your own personal hat, you could get shoe goo, or you can stitch mesh onto that hat to help you out with tying on jute and other things in camouflage. You can even go to like an army surplus store and buy this mesh and shoe goo it to your hat. Just be, when you use shoe goo, be very conservative with it, because you get too much shoe goo, it shines, okay? So I've already done a little pre-work on this. So when you buy a ghillie hat from Tactical Tailor, this mesh is probably this pretty long, which is way too long on your ghillie hat. And this is bordering on too long already, because this stuff gets caught on, if you're in heavily wooded areas, this stuff will get caught on the thickets and the thorns, and it'll pull it off your head. So you want to try to keep this to a minimum. So if you look at my original ghillie hat, I have very little mesh on it. This is a little too small, in my opinion. So that's why I just cut it down to this length. So let's talk about the old method of using jute. Jute's great. It's great filler. Remember, the jute is only filler. This isn't camouflage. This is to fill in behind the veg, okay, and to give a fullness to the veg that you're putting on yourself. The problem with jute, so when I work a tower, right, I'm looking for movement, and I'm also looking for color contrast. If you look, and I don't know if you can tell right now, but there's kind of a glow to this. And this is actually when somebody's observing you on glass, they can see the glow. We call it the ghillie glow. And I think the light is right now that you can actually see the glow of this. So one of the things that we do to mitigate some of that glow is we'll use a spray paint to get it down, or what we'll do is the day before stock, we'll throw it in a mud puddle, get it all muddy, and then get the excess off. But eventually it's still going to come back to this once it dries all out. So I think the spray paint is a better way to go, and it'll mitigate some of the shine, if you will. Okay, so old school methods. We would take sandbags, right? Cut them up and get strips of burlap. Some guys would take individual strands, these individual cut strands like this, and then try to get each fiber out. And that would just take hours and hours and hours to do. Then they started selling jute where you could buy it separately. So you can still do that. If you go to like surplus stores or some of these tactical stores. I think maybe even Optics Planet or US Cavalry, if that still exists. And you can buy jute. If you don't have that, you can buy twine from your hardware store and then cut out individual strands, because that's what you want. You want the individual strands, and then you're gonna change it as you tie it to your ghillie hat. So what we would do to make things easy, so this is what I did in the beginning. Instead of separating each of these individual strands, I'd cut strands like this, strips out of the burlap, tie this to the hat, and then take a brush and get the individual fibers so that it would just form the long fibers and get rid of the excess. But that still takes a lot of time. So if you want to do the old school method, you really want to just get after it and do a true ghillie with jute and all that, this is the way to do it, man. You got to get the individual strands of burlap or twine, cut multiple strands of this stuff, and then tie it to your hat, okay? And there's a couple ways to tie it to your hat. So you would get multiples of these. Let me cut out a couple. A good few of these strands, what you're gonna do at this point. So there's a couple ways you can do it. So some guys would take another strand of this and tie it to whatever attachment point they want to attach it to. I girth hitch it because I'm lazy. So I make a loop, okay. Make a loop, run it through. Nothing funnier than watching a one-handed guy try to tie knots. And just girth hitch it onto the hat. Now you're not worried about the length at this point. You're gonna fix all that because you're gonna take a brush to this, you're gonna get it wet, you're gonna get it dirty. But right now it's just a matter of attaching the jute to the ghillie hat. So you just do that over and over and over again. The burlap's a little bit more fine than the twine, but when you brush this out, it'll get thinner. But you can see, even just in the beginning of this, you can see the glow off of this, the shine off of this from the sunlight. I don't know if it shows up on the video, but I'm looking at this right now. This is actually really shiny, and it stands out. So all you would have to do is just repeat this process throughout the process of ghillieing up your hat. So, but we're not gonna do that today with this. It's a pretty simple process. It just takes a long time to do. And if you feel like you wanna do that, be my guest. I went to a hobby store and I saw something that was real interesting. They have fake plants. If you guys remember my video talking about veg fans, man, these are prefab veg fans. Now, depending on the environment, you may want to get a different type of plant, but the sage type plant is just about in every environment out there. And so you could have a prefabbed veg fan already made for you that you just need to shape a little bit and make it so it works for you. This is amazing because now one thing you're not doing is you're not cutting veg in the environment that you're working in. This can be very helpful so that you're leaving less trace, less sign behind. Okay, of course, if you leave this behind, then you're leaving more sign actually. Okay, so if you go to like, let's see, I went to Hobby Lobby. Hobby Lobby used to be Michael's, you know, where your grandmother shops and stuff like that. Well, they have cool things like this. I found this This is the kind of veg that we have out where we're at right now. It's like a sage, looks like sage almost, right? So, and it doesn't have to look exactly like the plant. It's just got, the color's got to be right, and you got to get rid of all the tags. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to use, let me sit down here. I'm going to use this fake plant. What's nice about this is it doesn't die. So one of the problems you have in a hot environment and you're using veg, you constantly have to check your veg and make sure that it's not wilting so bad that it's obvious that it's not the same as the environment around you. Now, with this, you're still going to use real veg, but this is going to be your filler as opposed to something like the jute, okay? And you probably, and we're going to see here, we're going to go ahead and build this ghillie hat, and we're going to see how it actually turns out and how much fuller it is as a ghillie hat. So it may actually take a lot less time, because when you're doing the traditional style, it takes a lot of jute to get that filler in. And so it's just a long process. It takes lots of strands of burlap to fill in that hat, okay? Now, you're not trying to look like a Wookiee's head when you do this. So usually what happens is when guys build their ghillie hat, they end up looking like a Wookiee. So that's a little too much. Now, if you go that far, you can thin it out, but I'm trying to show a way, possibly, that we can do this much quicker and a little bit easier, and something that you're not gonna have to spend a lot of time redoing all the time. So let's get started. So there's some weird shapes in here, so we gotta get rid of these things, right? This loop. Let's get rid of that. When I'm looking at my ghillie hat, the first thing, I'm gonna try to start from the front and on the peripheral to get the edges kind of filled in, and then we'll fill in the tail last probably after we do the crown. But what I wanna do is initially is to get the edges of the ghillie hat covered up. So let's see how this will work. So that's the nice thing about these pre-made ghillie hats. It's got the mesh already on there. I don't know what this costs. Technical Tailor's not the only one, but I think London Bridge does them, and US Cavalry has them, and you might be even able to find them on Optics Planet. All right, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna try to use the mesh, see if that works for me. So it's my opinion, and some guys might argue with me, I like mixing up the veg that I have in my hat, because I'm trying to look exactly like the bush that I have. I'm just trying to meld into that bush. And what I'm more concerned about when I do this is the texture. Because when I add real veg to the hat, that's what's gonna make it blend in with the bush. The problem with jute, it is a good filler, but like I said, it has its own glow, and it has a real distinct characteristic about it. So now I'm gonna take another sage type plant. It's a little bit of a different color, and I'm gonna add this to it too. All right, guys. So right now we've got the base done, and that was actually really fast. When you're building these ghillie hats, you'll spend 3-4 hours getting it just right. But right now, we have a good base for a ghillie hat. I have to still do the crown piece, and I still have a tail, but the way this is folding out, that shouldn't take much time at all to fill in that tail. And I may be able to cut this tail down just based on this material I'm using, that so I don't have little things where this gets pulled off my head. I don't have these getting caught in the stickers and stuff like that. So I might trim that down based on how well this veg fills this out. So let me get the crown done, and then we'll work on the tail. So as you're filling in the front, you go with shorter pieces, and you layer them in. Now with these prefabbed ghillie hats, what they don't do is they don't put mesh on the top part of the hat, which I wish they had at least 1 or 2 strands of 550 cord or something going across this, because this is the big barren spot. So you got to come up with creative ways to cover this bald spot, if you will. And then the thickness of this band that's supposed to hold, I don't know what this is designed for, maybe to hold veg or whatever it is. This band around here has a lot of shine to it, so we're gonna have to cover that up also. All right, guys, so this is the 70% solution right here. I think using this fake veg, this plastic veg, is actually an expedient way of getting this done. And you can see this looks like a bush. And you got the tail, it's got veg on it. So the way I would run this, if I were on a stalk, as I'm stalking in, I'm wearing the hat. Of course, I'm all ghillied up and got maybe mesh over my face. I got this on my head. As I get into my hide, I turn my hat around and I'd lay this over the top of the scope. This tail, that's why you want that tail. It provides you a little bit of texture on top of actually putting veg on there. And I think this would work in most environments, even in, you know, high desert. The only places like sand dunes, obviously, this probably wouldn't work. Unless there were shrubs in those sand dunes, then you may be able to set up next to it with this. Okay, so I'm gonna do a little bit more. So I don't know if you can see it, but there's a little bit of a shine to the plastic. Okay, so I have my trusty spray paint that I do everything with, paint my guns, everything. So I got a nutmeg because I couldn't find tan. All right, a satin Eden because I couldn't find OD. And a warm caramel. And so what I'm gonna start with, just because I wanna dust it up, and I may only use this, we'll see how it turns out. I'm gonna go ahead and use the nutmeg or tan. So if you look at it, it kind of looks like a bush. So now we're gonna put a little paint on it. Just to dust it up a little bit. Okay guys, hey, here's the ghillie hat. It's been painted, it's been dusted over. Here's what it looks like when in the hide. Pretty good. So I would say if you're looking for a quick way to veg up, Hobby Lobby, Michael's, whatever the name of the store is, get those fake plants and you can build your entire ghillie suit with this stuff with a little bit of fake veg and some paint. You don't even need the attachment pieces. Now, I will say you need to add good rubber bands to your ghillie hat so that you can put real veg. Remember, this is only filler, okay? In a pinch, would I use this without veg? Hey man, if I had a time crunch and I needed to get in there and get my shot off, hell yeah, I'd use this. But if I really want a super secure operation and I want to make sure I'm not going to see, I'm going to add natural veg to the situation. But this is a pretty good solution. I wish I would have done this years ago. It would have saved me about probably a week's worth of time of my life of trying to ghillie up my equipment. So there you go, guys. This is how you make a ghillie hat, and you can do the same for a ghillie suit if you wish to go this route. The other route is they already make full suits. Hunters have done real tree shawls and pullovers and ponchos that work really well, and you don't have to fabricate them yourself at all. And you know, places like Gander Mountain, they're super cheap there. You can go and buy your equipment there. But if you want to put the time in and make your own ghillie hat, here you go. So if you like today's content, please leave a comment, give me a thumbs up, and we'll see you next time.